All right, hello everyone out there. Welcome to the real estate panel of Bloomberg's Canadian Fixed Income Conference. My name is Altsetdter. I'm a reporter who covers Canadian real estate out of Toronto, and we're really lucky today to have two quite senior people from Canada's real estate industry with us for our panelists. We have Cecilia Williams, who's the Chief Financial Officer of Allied REIT. Hello, Cecilia. And Tamara Lawson, who's the Chief Financial Officer of QuadReal. Hello, Tamara. And without any ado, because we don't have enough time, we have tons of meaty topics to get into, I'm just going to launch right into it. And we'll talk about what's on everyone's mind, at least everyone who works in an office and is figuring out what to do next, and that's the return to office and the potential end from work from home. Now, over the last, over the summertime, let's say over the summertime, there's a lot of talk that Labor Day would be the point at which there'll be a stampede back to the offices and everything will get back to the way it was before. And the indicators that we've had from around the world really have been fairly mixed on that. And in fact, even if you've been going to the office, I just came back from Toronto's financial district just now, and it doesn't look too full. So I'm starting to wonder, well, what's going on? And let's go to our panelists and find out what you guys are seeing on the ground, what you're hearing from your tenants, what you're seeing in your properties around Canada and around the world. Cecilia, maybe we'll start with you if you don't mind.
Sure, absolutely. So we only operate in Canada, so I can speak only to our Canadian experience. And certainly Vancouver has been ahead of the curve in terms of physical repopulation of office or of workspace from the start. They did I think a much better job of managing their numbers. And so they were always much more repopulated than our Toronto or Montreal offices. I would say that right now, roughly 50% of our office space in Vancouver is repopulated. Calgary has been a bit more variable recently because of the unfortunate, rise in their numbers and hospitalization rate. They were trending higher, in that 30 to 50% range before this most recent situation. So hopefully, their numbers stabilize and improve and they can get back to that. Toronto and Montreal have been the slowest in our experience to repopulate. Actually, I walked down to the core yesterday and I was actually pleasantly surprised because I hadn't seen as many people at the corner of University and Front. I hadn't seen that many people in the last year and a half, but you're right. I think psychologically, everyone was thinking the week after Labor Day, school will be back, there will be more people. And I think we have seen that repopulation happen, but not in as meaningful of numbers as we originally expected. From our user base, everyone's saying that they intend to bring their people back. We haven't had anyone say we're going to a 50% working from office, working from home model. I think different companies in different industries are trying to manage the safety of their employees. I think the most recent mandate from the government for people to get vaccinated has helped. I think maybe whatever the day after Labor Day was, any of those start dates were maybe pushed to October 1. But we're certainly seeing more people in our buildings in both Toronto and Montreal. So I would say Toronto and Montreal in our portfolio are about 25% repopulated right now, and that number expected to increase from now to the end of the year.
And Cecilia, just to jump in there, to follow up for our viewers, my understanding is that Allied's tenant base, there's a lot of tech companies in that. Do you think that plays into that sort of sectoral composition, plays into the fact that what you're hearing is that a lot of people will be back to full occupancy eventually?
I think the tech companies, again, just from our experience, they want their people back together. I mean, they're the ones that invented this fantastic technology that we're using to even have this discussion right now virtually. But I think they realize, like others in other industries, that people are ultimately more productive and happier when they're together with their teammates, with their peers. And I mean, there is a bit of what I've noticed from my friends and some of my colleagues is there's a little bit more of a burnout situation happening when there isn't a commute and there is no distinction between home life and work life. And I think people want to have a place to go to work and then to leave to be with their families and with their friends in a separate physical environment. So I think this extended period of being outside of the office has perhaps, maybe I'm romanticizing it, I don't think I am, but I think it has perhaps actually made people maybe yearn for those days of going back to the office. And maybe it won't be 5 days a week. It wasn't even really 5 days a week before the pandemic. That flexibility might be more easily afforded with complete reopening. But I think ultimately people do want to be with their peers.
Okay, and Tamara, I want to turn the question to you because, QuadReal, you have a very large portfolio and it's all over the world across a number of different sectors. So I'm really curious to hear what intel you're getting from that network.
Okay, sure. Well, first of all, starting off, and I would say very similar to Allied in terms of our Canadian portfolio. We are seeing people come back. Since Labor Day, we have seen people come back, not to the extent we were anticipating maybe a few months ago, but it is increasing. Around the globe, we're seeing, we had our offices in Hong Kong were back early on in the pandemic because they had things quite under control. We saw our New York offices back in the springtime, sometime in the springtime, and they've been there, I would say, pretty steadily ever since then. The London office is back now. It was a little slower to go back, so it's a bit different by region. But I think if you look at the Avison-Young Vitality Index, which is really a global index, and it really is about workplace traffic, it's across the board seeing increases. It's significant. The traffic is still below, obviously pre-COVID levels, but we are seeing across, the globe increases. There's a few spots where that might not be the case. Australia, for example, and, maybe in other areas. And, as Cecilia mentioned, Calgary for us, people are working from home just in the last few weeks, but they had been in the office on a regular basis prior to that. So it's quite interesting. I also agree with Cecilia in terms of people wanting to come back to the office. And, I think research really does show that there's a lot of activities that are better suited to the office workplace. And, I think people also want that human connectivity as well. So, I think people want to come back. We've also seen a little bit of what Cecilia was talking about in terms of burnout and, just maybe a slowdown in productivity versus what happened initially coming right out of the pandemic. People were highly productive and everything was new and there was a lot of things that they needed to deal with. But I think as it's dragged on, burnout and productivity are becoming more of an issue. So, I think we'd like to get people back, and I think, on a bit of a hybrid model, I don't think people are going to want to give up the flexibility that they've enjoyed now over, the last year and a half. So I think that's, beneficial in terms of employees and their, satisfaction overall. But I think, our staff really, wants to get back.
So just to follow up on that, in terms of what you're hearing from your tenants on where they see things shaking out, do you see, are they saying, okay, we're going to be back 100%, or are they saying, oh, we're going to be back 3 days a week, 2 days a week, and we're going to need to cut our use of space? Have there been any projections or anything you're hearing from tenants on what they intend?
No, I mean, they haven't. I mean, I think everybody's saying that they want, they won't be back. I don't think anyone thinks they'll be back in an office setting. At our properties, it's totally different. They're back. They've always, they've never left. But in the office setting, I don't think it's going to be 100. I don't think anyone's talking about 100%. But, I'm hearing everything from, 3 days, 3 days a week to 4 days a week. That seems to be the most common. And we haven't heard a lot of people giving up space because I think they're also feeling like, they don't want to densify the way they were pre-pandemic. And I think they want space, more like social space and more, connection space and, sort of collaboration and interaction space. So I think we're hearing that people are looking at how to redesign things, but, at this point, not necessarily hearing that people will be giving up a lot of space.
Interesting. And in terms of investment, of where your companies are planning to invest, CBRE had a report about the second quarter, saw a record investment in commercial real estate for the quarter. The floodgates were open. It was really an industrial leading the way, multifamily a close second. Surprisingly, even retail didn't do that bad. It was about in line with its 3-year average. Office was the one sort of laggard, the notable laggard, well below its 3-year average in that quarter. So I'm just curious about where your companies are planning to invest going forward, the sectoral makeup, the geographic makeup, however you want to take that. Cecilia, I know that typically Allied has been a very office-focused company. I don't know if you're planning to diversify into other asset classes or change some geographic composition. However you want to take it, what investment changes are you making going forward coming out of this pandemic?
We will not be making any investment changes, and we have actually been able to take advantage of some opportunities that came up because of the pandemic. There were some private owners that had held real estate in their families for decades, and all of a sudden the pandemic hit and they realized, oh wait, these real estate investments are not a risk-free proposition. And so we were actually able to complete about 100 million of these small infill acquisitions last year and 100 million in the first half of this year, along some other larger acquisitions. And those don't seem like they amount to big dollar items, but they will represent incredibly strategic opportunities in the future for intensification and continuing consolidation in Canada's urban centers. So we continue to very much want to grow in Canada's urban cities, and we will look at whatever opportunities come up. We don't intend to change our operating or investing focus. We will still very much be focused on distinctive urban workspace across Canada.
Okay, Tamara, any planned changes to report in your investment makeup?
I mean, not really any changes because of COVID per se, but changes just because of the evolution of real estate and certain trends that have been happening there. But I mean, we are very focused globally. 80% of the investable universe is global for real estate. So we have been primarily focused on growing globally. And we are very focused on industrial and multifamily. Those are two of our key conviction areas. But we're also, looking at alternatives, and we're really seeing, in terms of real estate, an increase in investment into alternatives and things like student housing, land lease. We're investing in. Also, life sciences is another area that we're focused on. And data centers as well is another area that's been a high growth area. So, I mean, we're looking at both, development as well as, primarily development, going into sort of build to core is really kind of our focus that we're looking at there.
And will the forthcoming investments, will you continue to buy office assets or build office assets, or will it be more looking towards these alternative asset classes in terms of where you're allocating capital?
Well, I think it'll be mixed. We'll also be, in terms of development, I should just clarify, we're looking at sort of mixed use development with a focus on the residential side of things. And in those mixed use developments, they're primarily along transit lines. We will look at some office as part of a mixed use development, but unlikely standalone office without other residential components.
Interesting. That brings us to a topic that I'm really curious about. You bring up mixed use. Malls. People have been wondering what will happen to America's malls for a while now, and the pandemic has not helped. And a lot of mall owners, their planned solution is to turn these into mixed use developments by adding both office and residential to these properties, making sort of little neighborhoods. I'd be curious to hear each of your thoughts on this as a viable option. Cecilia, as an operator of office property, is this the kind of project you want to be a part of? Would you be involved in the redevelopment of a mall, adding an office component?
I don't think we'd ever rule anything out, hypothetically anyway. I'm not sure what the opportunities would be in Canada's cities to redevelop malls into office space, but I like to think that we would consider anything. I'm not sure if that's more of an opportunity outside of the city centers, which we don't play in that space, but maybe it's an opportunity for others.
And Tamara, your reaction to that?
Yeah, we're definitely, we're looking at, as I mentioned, we have a large development that we're working on currently right now, Oak Ridge Mall in Vancouver, which is very well located mall and has a lot of residential and sort of high-end residential areas around it. So, our interest there is that we're densifying with additional residential, and there's a bit of office going in there. Primarily, we're focused on the residential densification side of things. So, definitely that. That's what we're looking at in terms of retail. The retail is really changing a lot, as you know, and the demand is really pivoting to like prime destinations and convenience are sort of the two main areas of focus in terms of retail. But retail as an industry is doing well. It's a big part. It's a huge market. Both in terms of all retail makes up a huge portion of our GDP. So we think there are opportunities. But it's major urban centers. We really aren't focused on anything other than major urban centers. We're not focused on strip malls or any of the retail that have had issues. So it's really a mixed use transit densification opportunity that we feel is going to be the best area to focus in on.